These Hollywood producers and studios cannot help themselves when they are adapting J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings. We have a new report that claims The Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim, will inject feminism into Tolkien's classic tale of Helm Hammerhand. So if you're unfamiliar with what Lord of the Rings, The War of Rohirrim is, it's an animated film that was announced back in June 2021 with Warner Brothers Animation president Sam Register explaining this will be yet another epic portrayal of J.R.R. Tolkien's world that has never been told before. We're honored to partner with much of the incredible talent behind both film trilogies, along with new creative luminaries to tell this story. It has been told before. It's been told in Appendix A by J.R.R. Tolkien. Maybe it hasn't been adapted before, but it has been told before. J.R.R. Tolkien told it in the appendix of The Lord of the Rings. At the time of the announcement, it was revealed the film would tell, quote, the untold story behind the Fortress of Helm's Deep, delving into the life and blood-soaked times of Helm Hammerhand. So if you're unfamiliar with this little short story that Tolkien wrote in Appendix A about Helm Hammerhand, it basically follows him as he refuses a marriage proposal from one of his lords, a man named Freka, who demands that Helm marry his daughter to Freka's son, Wolf. Following this meeting, Helm Hammerhand one-hit KOs Freka, kills him with one punch, and then he declares that Freka and all of his men, including his son Wolf, are enemies of Rohan. Fast forward 4 years later, and Rohan is besieged by 3 fleets of corsairs up and down its coasts. Freka's son Wolf then decides to take advantage of the besieged kingdom and invades with an army of Dunlettings, as well as what Tolkien describes enemies of Gondor that landed in the mouths of Lefnwy and Isen. Helm rides out to meet Wolf. He is bested by Wolf and his forces at the crossing of Isen. He then flees to the Hornburg, which is later known as Helm's Deep. There, Wolf lends much of his forces to besiege the fortress, but he himself and another part of his army head to Edoras, where they kill Helm's son Haleth, who is defending the doors of the Medusaled there in Edoras. While Helm is besieged in Helm's Deep, when the winter sets in, we get 5 months of snow. So lots of people are dying, starving. One of Helm's second son, Hama, decides to lead a sortie against Helm's wishes to try and obtain food from the besiegers. Doesn't go out well. He never returns, being lost to the snow and nature. Helm, filled with grief, goes out and dresses in white, does not carry in any weapons, and begins slaying anyone in his path in the enemy camp night after night. Eventually, he succumbs to the forces of nature. Tolkien describes him basically being frozen solid, and he looks like a statue out on the plains when the sun comes up one morning. Fortunately, his nephew Freyleaf does come and ambush Wolf's forces at Edoras, kills him, defeats them, and then as the snows melt, an army from Gondor arrives to meet up with Freyleaf's army, and they drive the Dunlettings out of Rohan, and then they also drive them out of Isengard as well, and Freyleaf is eventually crowned king. So that is basically the gist of the short story, but we've got a new report here that according to Slash Film, that the actual protagonist of the film is going to be the unnamed daughter of Helm Hammerhand, who literally doesn't take part in any of the short story that Tolkien wrote. She's not mentioned other than the fact that Freka wants Wolf to marry her, but now they are making her the protagonist of the film. They've also named her Hera after a Greek name, after the Greek goddess, instead of maybe a Norse name, because clearly they're naming her after a queen, so you know that there's some hint of what her role will be in this film. Producer Philippa Boyens explained the decision to make her the protagonist, saying everyone else dies. Yes, that's the point. It's a tragedy. It's a tragic story. That is the point of the short story. That is one of the themes of it. And you are completely erasing that theme because you didn't apparently like the short story in the first place. Like, what's the point of even adapting it if you're not going to actually follow the source material? It makes absolutely no sense. Nevertheless, she also says, and before you start complaining, this is already in the text. No, it's not. The female character is not already in the text. She's not there. She's not the protagonist. She's not in the text. And also, the story takes place centuries before the movies. Well, what does that have anything to do with anything? You should still be following the source material. Okay, so just bizarre reasonings for why this is happening. Mainly because those probably aren't the reasons. It's probably because of DEI obligations. They probably have a quota just like every other studio out there. And on top of that, they probably want to insert their own feminist agenda. So not only is Hera the protagonist, but according to Slash Film, the character is based off of Aethelflaed. I'm probably butchering that name, but she's actually a real life figure, Lady of the Mercians, and daughter of Wessex King Alfred the Great. So I'm not against this. I don't see anything wrong with this here. This is actually an interesting inspiration from, which would be good, but it doesn't work because that's not the story. So again, this would be great if you were creating your own story that wasn't Tolkien and you weren't adapting it from Appendix A. So that's completely beside the point. And then we have here the director of the film reportedly, quote, described Hera as tomboyish, a young woman who is wild and vulnerable with a character arc that sees her grow in a time of war, because you can't really have a Middle-earth story without war. Well, yes, the entire short story is about a giant war against Rohan. So that's accurate. It should be in war, but again, she shouldn't be the main character. And the fact that they're describing her as tomboyish and wild and vulnerable, I don't know. I'm just kind of over that. It just sounds like a Rey knockoff, and no one really likes Rey, despite Lucasfilm doing a new movie with her that's going to bomb at the box office. But that's beside the point. Slash Film also reports that, according to Boyens, both men think with their muscles, talking about Helm Hammerhand and Freka. And Freka's proposal of marrying his son to Helm's daughter is the inciting incident that begins the titular war. I think that's accurate. And I think maybe both men thinking with their muscles isn't that much accurate. I would say more like they think with their ego and their pride rather than their muscles. But I guess you can go with that too. That's not too bad. But we also get this part here, that there's actually a scene in the film that, quote, shows the politics at play in Edoras, with the Lord of Rohan wanting to erase the history of a group of female warriors and banner women to the king, a prelude of things to come. So that just looks like modern day politics being inserted into the film. Has absolutely no reason for being there. It's just absolutely appalling. So I was actually really interested in this film because I thought the short story was great. The source material is fantastic. But after reading this, I have absolutely zero interest in seeing this film, and now I'm actively rooting against it and hope it fails at the box office because honestly, I'm just sick and tired of this crap.